Hello, and welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club. I'd like to wish a good local time to everyone. The main purpose of the I-40 Club is to engage the power of diverse worldwide talent to accelerate the global evolution to Industry 4.0. Our aim is to host respectful, thoughtful, and interdisciplinary open conversations. This is Women in Manufacturing. Our conversation focuses on tech and manufacturing. In this space, we discuss the perspectives and challenges of women at work and at home. Our topic of discussion today is titled Leading Positive Change by Innovating, Motivating, and Inspiring. I'm Carol Mitchell-Lin, an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder. For 6 years, I've been creating content for I-40 adoption in manufacturing. And when I'm not supporting my fellow co-founders, I help manufacturers and service providers reach their customers with content strategies that prioritize experience and expertise. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host and fellow co-founder, Grace Donovan. Hi, Grace.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. So as Carol mentioned, I'm also a co-founder of the Industry 4.0 Club, and I've been co-hosting with Carol for a little over a year now. And I am currently the executive director of the Rural Engagement and Vitality Center in Eastern Oregon, which is an organization that's connecting with community-based organizations and private enterprises and making the university more of a resource to the community and providing hands-on experiential learning for students. So thrilled to be here today and to speak with our fantastic guest.
Thanks, Grace. Yes, we're pleased to have as our special guest today, Kara Branch. Kara is a chemical engineer, a speaker, an author, and in her spare time, founder of the Black Girls Do Engineer organization. Now in its 4th year, it's become a valuable resource for Black American girls aged 6 to 21 to gain exposure to STEM careers. Hi, Kara.
Hey, Carol. Hey, Grace. Thank you both for having me on.
Of course, welcome. So we're going to make you front and center as our guest of honor. And to kick things off, we shared a little bit about your background and kind of what you're bringing to the table and all, in the 24 hours that you have in a day. But we'd love it if you could tell us a little bit more about you and give us an idea of where you are today and what that journey has been like that brought you here.
Yeah, absolutely. I do so many things. So I've taken some time to really summarize them in 3 key points, of which we kind of already mentioned. But I like to call myself an innovator, a motivator, and inspirator. A lot of that I do from the innovator perspective is I am a degree chemical engineer. I have done a lot of great engineering work across many industries. I started my career in oil and gas. I'm based here in Texas, so we love our oil and gas. And then I have transitioned into the aerospace world, where I did a lot of great things for the space program. And from there, I worked as an engineering manager, managing software engineers at Intel corporations. And so I've been able to work in oil and gas, the aerospace, and tech industry. But one of the things I love about being an innovator, in many of those industries, I worked on first of their kind projects. And it's been a pure joy. I'm very future-driven, futuristic. I love things all around, all new innovations that's occurring in the world. And so I've been able to have the pleasure to be a part of many. When I'm not being an innovator, I like to be a motivator. People tell me I'm very inspiring. So I said, let me figure out how to continue to do that. So when I'm not being an innovator, I am doing keynote speaking, going around and speaking to people to kind of share my story with them, and also host my own podcast. And I believe we'll talk a little bit about it, but it's called Inspire to Empower Her podcast that I'll be releasing soon. And that's just to kind of share my learnings with people, hopefully to encourage them to keep going in their endeavors. And then my inspirator piece is a huge piece of what I've been doing lately, which is my nonprofit, Black Girls Do Engineer. So doing that, being an author, writing my STEM children book to encourage children all over the world to educate them on what STEM is, as well as my STEM kit line. So that's my whole inspirator piece, just really to inspire kids, the future generation of STEM, and hopefully to get them into these spaces.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so it's so interconnected, right? And so you mentioned motivator, inspirator, and innovator, and they're all, I see them as very interconnected. You feel free to correct me. But so much of motivation, well, what makes someone really motivational and really inspirational comes from kind of perhaps, challenges that you've overcome. And, I think it's worth mentioning just what we're looking at when, and this is something Carol and I have discussed, on this, on this platform for quite a while. Women in STEM, I've seen different studies, but it ranges from 25 to 30%, generally speaking. And then of that percentage that are women, a much, much, much smaller percentage are women of color.
Yeah.
And as someone who kind of embodies some of those different identities and intersections, how has that, what challenges has that perhaps presented? And you say, like, motivating people to continue and press forward, how does that connect with your own story? Because so many people, that's what's really motivating and inspirational, is seeing other people that look like you, that have your same identities, that you see have accomplished so much. Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious to dig in there a little bit more.
Absolutely. I like to start where I'm from, because I like to tell people you can come from a small town and do big things. So I'm from a little bitty town called Port Arthur, Texas. Here in Texas, my mom was a single parent raising me. I have siblings. I'm the baby, so that sums a lot of me as well. um, and growing up in Port Arthur, Port Arthur houses the world's largest refinery. So I grew up literally with oil and gas right in my backyard. Like, it's literally there. It's not a joke. So my whole family has always worked in oil and gas, but never from this type of educational getting that education to be able to go do so. A lot from the manufacturing perspective, most of my family has and still do. It's a thing in Port Arthur for sure. So coming from Port Arthur, my mom, she moved me and my siblings to Austin, Texas, which was the city. And that's when I was first exposed to city life and more possibilities. It moved much faster than Port Arthur. So when I moved to Austin, I got to be exposed to more of a city life, more different arenas that you can go into, but still kind of lived in an underserved, predominantly Hispanic and Black American community. And one thing I knew and one thing I stayed dedicated to from my whole childhood all the way up into growing up is that I wanted to go to college. Didn't know what that meant because no one in my family had really done it. But I knew that I had always done well in school, and I was always a high achiever, and that the next step for me coming out of school would be college. And so I tell people most of the time, I spent majority of my life with my mom, when my educators and teachers telling her daughter is smart, but no one ever told my mom what to do with her smart daughter. So I was never exposed to resources. It wasn't until I actually did go and get into college and meeting with my freshman advisor, that's when I really understood what my possibilities could be. And I do credit my ninth grade chemistry teacher, Miss Chapman, for exposing me to understand what chemistry was and that I was good at it. Like, she used to throw these balancing equation problems on the board, and I just knew how to do it. And I was like, why do I get this stuff? And so that's when I really discovered my love for chemistry, but never really knew what I can go with it until college. I had always been good in science. I was a great writer. And I also was just happened to be good in math. And I really wanted to go to college and become a dance major. I had this dream to go be Usher's background dancer. That's what I wanted to do. I loved Usher, and I was like, I'm about to go be his background dancer, because that's something I was exposed to in school, right? With sports, doing things like that. And then my aunt told me, no, I was not going to go be Usher's background dancer, and that I was most definitely going to figure out something else to do. And so my freshman advisor, she showed me a catalog, and it had engineering in there, and she showed me my possibility of what I can do with putting my love for chemistry with math together. And that's how I understood that I could become a chemical engineer. So it took me all the way to my freshman year of college to understand my possibilities. And so once I got accepted into this school of engineering, I set goals with myself, and I told myself if I passed my first two courses, engineering courses, that I was going to become a chemical engineer. And so I did, and I continue to set semester by semester based goals, and that's why I'm a chemical engineer today. And so my work that I do is very important to me. I really do it off of exposure because I was not exposed. I didn't have the resources. My mom, her concern was mostly like going to work, working multiple jobs to take care of her children as a single mother. So she didn't really have the time to sit down and think about, let me throw my kid in this camp, or even know what camp possibilities there were for me. So I take the whole exposure piece very, very seriously. To answer your question about the whole thing about women who look like me in this space, going into industry, coming from a school, my college with my degree, I went to a historically Black college and university where I sat in class with students who always looked like me, to going into my first role as being the only Black woman in that role. So it was a very big cultural shock to me. To be able to adapt to the space, because I had spent so much of my time in school being around people who were working at the same goals as me. And so it's very quite shocking. And also being still having my small town roots and just my background, right? Coming from an underserved community which lacks many resources. I was had to learn how to maneuver the space. And so that was always hard and tricky for me. But at the end of the day, I always loved being an engineer. So my passion for my work and seeing my work change the world is what kept me motivated and going. And what I do tell people, although I have been the only Black woman in all of my roles, which we got a long way to go, I can guarantee you there were several Black women who came behind me. So I've had the pleasure of opening up doors for more women to come into the space. And so I spent a lot of my time making sure that changed. So it is inspiring because I kept going to a lot of women that I meet and keep going, and because I love it. I love doing what I do. And I honestly believe if you love doing what you do, no matter what obstacles you face, you should never let anyone step in the way of that.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's it's nice to see kind of that, understanding how that passion kind of is a little bit of that self-sustaining things that you need to keep going forward. Because it can be a tough road. It can be a real tough road.
There's some of the stories that you told us when we first met Cara around innovation, and I'd like to take that a step further, because sometimes with innovation things need to change. Sometimes it's not just something new. Sometimes things are existing need to be made better through change. And I gathered from your stories that something that came easy to you, and that you're able to see things from an out of the box way, or you weren't afraid of rocking the boat with the hopes that something can be done better. And I wanted to get a better idea of where this comes from with you and how it served you.
Yeah, as my first manager described it, as I was the one who can do all the weird stuff. That's what he used to call me when he introduced people to me. I don't know. I think it comes a lot from just loving to be challenged. I can say one of the ways I learned to master a lot of my studies was from having high school on up. I always taught myself out the book. I had to learn how to teach myself out the book if I was going to get the material the best way that I could. So I've always been of going through challenges and mastering from a whole understanding things. I'm a researcher. I think I'm a born researcher. Even when I'm at home watching just a TV show, I spend probably a lot of my time researching everybody in that show. I just love researching all day and every day and staying current on things. From me, I love hard stuff, and I just get hard stuff. I don't know why I get it. I just do. I've had the pleasure of working on many first-year type projects, a lot of projects that people have walked in the room and said, that's impossible. Being able to figure out how to make it possible. And I think it speaks also to my work ethic. I like to spend that time really digesting things and trying to figure it out. Some people may call that a genius. I don't know if I'm a genius, but it just makes sense to me. It always has in my industry. And so I've been able to take on very, very different things and being able to figure them out. I've done it many different ways for many different companies. I've come into many companies where I was the first one working on it and was able to figure it out. I've just had that natural ability to be able to master things. I'm not saying that it's not hard. I just think I've been committed to it. I take the time to sit down and figure out every little piece of it to make it work. I'm an engineer. I love to problem solve. And I get a fulfilling pleasure of figuring out things that people are trying to figure out. So it's just a natural ability. Now, I can do all that hard stuff, but some things that are easy, my family looks at me and be like, why don't you understand the easy parts? So I probably can do a little bit better with easier stuff. But I've just been able to master it in my career and do a lot of groundbreaking work because of it.
It sounds like you have
Go ahead.
It sounds like you have a great combination of curiosity and stubbornness.
That's me. I do what I like to do. I'm very curious all day, every day. I'm just wonder. That's why I've taken a whole futuristic approach. Like, I feel like I've done so many things because my career was not traditional start. I started very small in my early start of my stages of my career. So I learned so much so fast. The goals of the first company I worked for, these were all people who have been doing this for 40 plus years. And their goal was to retire. All right. And they brought in 5 young engineers and their goal was to teach us all that they had known. So my start was not your typical start into industry. So I learned so much and I've been able to do so much so fast in my career. So like when I sit in those rooms, I'm able to understand that, right? So my mind is like, okay, I've done it. Now my mind is curious. My mind is like, what are we trying to solve? Why are these now known names? Like, what are they figuring out that no one's figuring out? So my passion is more driven there. My passion is learning what's next. What can I go play with next? And be able to change the world from a whole different lens.
Mm-hmm. So kind of taking that piece, stubborn and curious. And I think that really just plays to, everyone has their own competitive advantages. Sometimes I look at people and I'm like, wow, how did you arrive at that conclusion? Or, I think, my brain would have approached that very, very differently. And it just really comes down to, styles of thinking and just, everyone's competitive advantage. It's similar just in business and how we can be as people. So I think that, it is very relative to what is hard and what is easy. For some people, it's going to be totally flipped. And, in some areas, I think it's going to be a lot more challenging. And you mentioned, you're doing a lot of ground up work. You're doing a lot of first time things for the first time, which I think across the board is really hard because if you don't have anyone to look to or you have to piece all of those pieces together, that can be really overwhelming and challenging because it's what they call it, like BHAG's big, hairy, audacious goals, or in this case, it could be a problem, but it's tough to break that down. And so when you've been responsible for strategy and setting goals for teams that you've worked with, how do you approach that motivation piece and how do you apply this to yourself and the projects that you've taken on, both with industry as well as now for your nonprofit? That's a big question. Break it down.
For sure. Yeah. So in my case, it has always been a problem. I'm happy you spoke to that. It has always been a problem. I tell people that although I am an innovative mind and I love to do great things that I think could make many companies successful. And I can say that because I've used everything I want to do for other people company for myself and I've made me successful. I always tell people that it was a problem. A lot of people they say they want innovators, but when it's time to go in the companies and innovate, it's a whole problem. Like, no, I didn't want to go that direction just yet. Or so I typically would get in trouble a lot in industry because of my innovative mind. I'll just be honest. I'm always looking for the company that's really ready for that, right? Because I speak a lot about that. People say they are, but are they truly ready? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes they do put you in a box or want you to focus on the task at hand. And when you are so innovative, that's not what you really truly want to be doing. You're really settling, right? To do what needs to happen for the company. So I've gotten in trouble plenty of times for that. However, my teams that I have led has loved it. Uh, my teams usually love my innovative and my approach because, for one, they're growing, right? You're able to challenge them in different ways, because you love a good challenge. So I've had a lot of people who work for me that truly enjoy working for me for just those reasons alone, that I'm listening to them. I'm finding new ways for them to do it. And to be honest with you, they're curious too, right? Everybody, especially in any company, you should be looking at that way that you're going to gain competitive advantage, right? Everybody should be looking at that. But for me, it's mostly like they're learning stuff as I'm learning. They're being challenged. I think for me, I've always been, because I tell people I'm very young, but I've learned so much so fast. So working with my teams, they get like this perspective, this fresh perspective with me, and I'm really big on self-care and stuff like that. So they've been able to be very relaxed, challenging environment. It's really hard to explain. You would have to ask them their things. But I do know, every time I have love from leading my teams, that they are very grateful for me, and I'm still in contact with many people that have worked for me. So I'm able to just challenge them in ways that they want to be challenged, and give them a whole different approach on, from a whole different perspective of what the industry can be, depending where I'm at. But I know from having my own team, it's been a very creative environment. I really hire people to come in with their creativity, and give them the road of like my requirements, but also let them be who they are and come into the space and create, and be able to help my nonprofit grow with me. And I think that's been a nice approach for them, because a lot of times when you're working in an environment, you're kind of just have a lot of constraints where you're kind of grounded to what's required and that's it. And some people have a micromanaging mentality. There's so many different personalities that people can have in a workplace. I think for me, it's just kind of like I tell my team, my approach is very different from the approaches that I had to endure in my industry. Letting them be able to just be who they are, respect them for who they are, and that's all just come together and make something great. So because of that approach, I can say many of my people have been with me since 2019, and grown with me because I've been able to give them the space to do just that. I've been able to see my team grow in their own personal lives, outside of me. Where we started together, they're all leading their teams now. They've all been able to develop great leadership skills, and be able to understand a lot of things that I do and put them in their own life. So everyone around me have physically just grown, right? And I believe that's what, as a leader, that's what I would like to see. If your team is not growing with you or elevating, then for me, I feel like that's not the right way to be going, because to be honest with you, everybody are looking for their next steps and their next growth for sure in someone's company. So I've been able to do that with me, and people laugh because sometimes my team goes and go work for other people because I have helped them go work for other people. And they say, why are you helping your team go leave? And I'd be like, because they have somewhere else that's meant for them in their life, right? It's for them to grow and be at. So I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm more of a understanding that people are going to grow, people are going to develop, people are going to go out and do better things. And that's what I do here with my nonprofit. But
I'm surprised that view isn't entirely standard across the business world, truly, because, if you're not helping someone, move on in advance, like we live in an at-will employment society. So if it's a mutual choice, and if someone, to help them in their career, because that reflects really well on you can't be, I think it doesn't work out for people in the long run who are trying to hold on to that talent.
Yeah.
Because, it will come through. And I think that, word will spread in terms of, this is a business that promotes its employees, that, invests in their growth. And that is really, really valuable, especially in a tight labor market where employees now are looking for places where they want to go, where they're going to see investment in themselves. So I think that's, a viewpoint that is very healthy for where we should be, I think, as an economy. So I personally really appreciate that. And I've had the good fortune for working for companies like that. And that should be the standard. So
Yeah.
I'll get off my little soapbox. But I wanted to, so you mentioned, you've led a lot of teams within industry where you have very tight constraints and where you're getting into trouble, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine a little team of skunks like over here trying to innovate, the internal skunk works teams. How would you often approach being told no or helping people reframe mentally? Because oftentimes just saying no to a new idea is just a reaction. It's foreign, it's new, I don't want to deal with it. So that answer is no. How would you overcome that? Because that's something that people deal with no matter where they are in industry or wherever.
Mhm.
And it's a really important and valuable skill. So I'm curious how you approach that.
I learned from a college friend a long time ago. She said, turn every no into a yes, right?
Yes. How is the question?
So for me, I'm really big on, if I need to get my point across, I can do a lot of different ways. I can do it from a technical realm where I can build a presentation and collect everything I need to collect to make you understand to say yes. Or if it doesn't work that way for you, because most companies want to know at the end of the day, what's my return on investment? Why is this needed now? It's called really your business case, right? Talking to employees, your employer about why you should be doing this in your perspective. To be honest with you, if that didn't work, I just went and opened the doors myself. Whether I built something for myself or just go do my own thing. Because I'm kind of in the space now. When I was very, very first starting out, it was kind of like, this is all I knew, right? My parents were working parents, right? My family was working class family. Like work was all I knew. So I didn't know how to step outside of that work environment. And when I started transitioning into a whole entrepreneurial world, it was like, you can say no, but I'm kind of gonna go make myself be fulfilled, right? Whether that was me advancing my education, whether that was me getting certifications, right? Whatever was going to make me feel that I was fulfilled in that company, I was going to go out and do it anyway. Because I don't allow people at this level of where I am to say no. Because I've been told no and very young, and it was just, it's not the best feeling, right? That's kind of when you kind of get stuck in that box. Like I'm an innovator mind. And it's probably why I work for so many industries. Because if I couldn't get it there, I'm sad to say I was going to go somewhere else that was going to value it and do it there for me. And so now I'm at the point where I kind of fulfill myself. So I'm at a point where I fulfill me. I do what I want to do and make sure I'm fulfilled, where if anyone's telling me no, it's me telling me no. But being in a corporate environment, which I've been in for eight years at this point, it was just a business case for me. I think also it was a respect from my employer when they seen that I was coming in and doing great things, saving money there, saving money here, doing all these great things, and really just being who I was and caring about the company to do well for them. It became that they trusted my opinion, and they knew that I had the right information to present to make them better and stronger. So it got easier that way as well. But now I'm at a level where I'm going to go do what I want to do for myself. My motto is, many people know me, you only get one life, right? How you going to live it? So that's what I go do.
By you doing you,
That's right, Carol. I'm doing me now.
Over time, as you put your head down and you do you. Over time, you actually become like an inspiration to others, even though you really didn't set out to do that. We met. I think it's 2 years ago now. You were on our clubhouse room for the Industry 4.0 Club, and we talked about your not-for-profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by just you doing you and having an impact and setting goals, that you've over those 2 years have become an inspiration to us. I know for me as well. And but I'd like to know is what other ways do you see yourself inspiring others, especially young women, and as well as the graduates that you're working with your organization. And I know we didn't talk about this earlier, but do you see yourself in any of the graduates as well? So there's a few questions there.
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure over 4 years. Oh my God, my program has impacted, just last year, we impacted over 2,000 girls. With the program, we've impacted over 3,000, a good bit over 3,000 since we started in 2019. I've been able to help these girls grow in tremendous ways. And I chose to inspire the younger generation, mostly because I'm a mom. I have 3 daughters. So my story is my oldest daughter inspired me when she was 9. She wanted to become a software engineer, and she's now 12 and still working towards her software engineer journey. So she really inspired me to start this thing. But what I can say, since I've started, I have inspired so many girls. I can give a few things. I can say this weekend, I do a lot of innovative projects with my girls. They're very project based. And I did one around carbon reduction, footprint reduction with them. And these are just high school students, right? This is an issue that everyone's working to fight in the world. So I created a challenge for just high school students, right? And they were able to do great quality of work in presenting. And, sometimes when you do these projects, you think they just stop there, right, in the room. Well, I had one young lady in my program who's been with me since 2019. She came on the stage. She was like, Ms. Kyra, I submitted my project to the NAACP, and I run like 3rd place award, right? These girls are like taking what they're doing here and being able to go get recognized for just their work at an early age and show people that they are, with just what I say they are all the time, future leaders of this industry. I've been able to inspire girls by helping them get to college. One young lady was told, no, that she shouldn't even go seek a university. She should go seek a community college first, which is nothing wrong with that. However, with our help, we were able to help her get accepted into 5 universities, and she's now on a full scholarship due to us studying, right? We have 2 young ladies we've just sent, just this year alone, $22,500 to universities for them to help with their first year of colleges. One on Saturday, I went to actually, she graduated Friday. I went Saturday to her home, and her whole family was there. This was a child who was worried about, how am I going to pay for college? Now I'm in college. How do I pay for it? Mm-hmm. So to be able to give her a $10,000 check in front of her whole family and watch this child cry, I mean, that's how you know you're changing lives and impacting them. I can say I've inspired a lot of girls in my program specifically because none of them want to leave me. They are always still here. I have one right now that's still here because I tell people, why do my girls stick around and stay around me? And I have a lot of girls. Every year I have 60 girls in my program. And that's by choice. We have a higher number of people who want to be a part. I tell people, these girls, they stick around with me and are so inspired by me because they have somebody who believes in them. And a lot of times it's hard to find that person who truly believes in you. And want to be doing this type of work for you. Me and my team are all volunteers, right? We do this just because we want to do it. We don't get paid for these services. And so these girls, we've watched them grow up. And it's so many stories. I don't even think we have enough time to say all the stories and all what I've seen these girls in my program be able to conquer in their own lives because of the support from us. So I've been able to inspire them. I've been able to inspire my team. I can't tell you how many of my team members are back in school to become engineers because they wish someone would have told them it was a possibility.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I said. I
Yeah.
said, every time someone comes up to me, they're in
Never
school.
too late.
So Well, and then also I meet women and from all different walks of life who just can be volunteering with my program. That all of us say the same thing. I say it too. I wish I had someone do this for me when I was younger. And they're starting to understand their possibilities and are looking for different routes and ways that they can go and learn something new too for their skill set. Even the parents of the girls in my program, I can't tell you how many
Yes.
are sitting right there learning because they
That's
had
awesome.
never had that type of exposure. So our impact is real. We're changing lives. We've pushed out many girls to go to college. We just pushed out 2 more to go to study. One's about to study computer engineering. One's about to study civil engineering. We're pushing out children. We've been doing this since 2019, pushing out people. And I tell people all the time, give me about 5 or 6 more years and you'll be able to see the full results of how many girls we're pushing into these industries. So my team is probably better to say it than I am because I'm very humble. I don't talk about all the greatness and all the things because I just like to stay grounded and remember my why. But they could probably tell you much more of the impact and all the greatness that I've done with the girls in my community's lives for sure.
Well, it's interesting and cool to see those ripple effects, right? So it's not just the girls that are in part of the program, but it's the staff around them and the families around them. And it just comes back to that exposure piece that you mentioned. And I think this is really where, community colleges can fill such need when it comes to like having really accessible and technical education that's suited for kind of adult learners, right?
Yeah.
So there's a role for everything, and I think that's just so fantastic that folks are feeling inspired. And it's never too late. I think oftentimes that's a story we tell ourselves. Our lives are very linear. It's just going to keep going in the straight direction, but we can pattern interrupt, we can change, we can, it's never too late to to change course and try something new. And especially it's so needed.
With myself, like even though I've had a lot of degrees, a lot of certifications, I'm still learning. I'm still challenging myself and learning more. I feel like you can always continue to learn. So for sure, it's never too late.
Absolutely. And so for anyone who's listening, go ahead and click on the link that I just put in the chat to learn more about Black Girls Do Engineer and see more. One of the things that I really appreciated about, because we mentioned in the beginning, you're working with girls 6 to 21. So there's some that that are going off to college, some that are already in college. But it's something that is talked a lot about in STEM is that very often, especially women are kind of coming to this a little bit later in their, educational careers, whether that be high school or even college. Mm-hmm. And so joining STEM is sometimes an afterthought, or it's just, this is going to work out. This is really great. But it's so important to start that early. And you look at that as kind of growing a tree on your website where you start with the soil, which is really, really young kids, which is going to be that base that's so necessary. And so I think in 5 to 6 years, right now you're working on growing a tree and focusing on all parts of that, what's going to make this healthy and sustainable and, long lived.
Absolutely, because these children are ready for it. My youngest is 4, and I tell myself sometimes I would throw her in my program, but the challenge I would face there is that she's my, the CEO of our home, and so when she wants mommy, she wants mommy. So that's the only reason why I haven't throw her into my program. But we have about our youngest starting at 6, and when I tell you these kids are coding at 6 and doing all these amazing things at that age, they're so ready for it. We were able to determine that through a pilot. Like we had to do a pilot with our program to really understand if that age group was ready. And I can tell you, I watched these girls take on everything I throw at them. And even when you're talking about a lot of things that's futuristic and things that we may think that we're the ones who, because we're in those rooms working these projects, that we're so like the ones who understand it. But you'll be surprised when you mention these things to these children. They are very aware of what's going on. And I think it's mostly due because they have a lot of more technology devices and applications than we did. But they're so ready for it. They are very ready for it. And these are kids. I tell people, if I did go down lower, I think I could, because these kids understand that hands-on approach. I watch them build things that's just spectacular in our space. And even my guest speakers who come in, even when they ask them questions, it's my elementary group is the ones with hands up consistently answering these questions. So that's why I started at first at 9, because my daughter was 9 when she told me. And then after the pilot, then I was realized that I can go down even farther. So I just want people to feel that, like, if they're wondering if these children are ready to be exposed, because I know some people are pacing themselves going from high school. They're trying out with high school. Then they'll go to middle school a little bit, but they're all ready. They're all ready. And I think we need to introduce them not just to all these STEM areas, but these industries as well. They need to understand what these industries do, and they need to be able to see themselves there. Exposure is the key. So that's why I do a lot of from exposure piece. And then, of course, the other element is representation. I like my girls to see women who look like them in this space. Mostly because my very first member meeting in 2019, I spent the whole hour just talking about just that. Many of my girls had never seen a Black woman who was an engineer ever in their lives. So me and my team had to sit down and talk to them about what it is that we do and the space that we are in. And what we noticed from that, and from having them work with us, they became like very confident in this space. And now a lot of those girls from day one who've been in my program that had those struggles of not seeing a Black woman as an engineer, they see themselves as Black women as engineers and can tell you what college they want to go to and all these amazing things that come with it. They are heavily built. I like to call them critical thinkers. So, and to sum it all up, these kids are ready, ready more than we ever thought, because they have so much more than we had. That's intriguing in their minds. So maybe they're curious. Hopefully not the stubborn part.
we can encourage stubbornness. We can do that.
That is who I am. But they're very curious. They want to know why. Right. They are, this is, they're the generation behind us, and this is their world, and they're very want to be understanding of what is going on in it. So I would say expose them all.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you mentioned visibility, and you are now an author of a book, and I think Carol has it on hand if you'd like to showcase it, Carol. So we'll do a little switch. So what is STEM? Thanks, Carol.
That is it. Yeah.
Oh, Carol, you're on mute. Just by the way.
My question to you when I was reading the book, which is really, really nice, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess I wanted to know what inspired you to self-publish, as well as do you see yourself becoming an author and writing more books? Where do you see yourself going with that?
Yeah. So when I first came up with the concept to write the book, I realized that it was just a need. Like, from doing my work with my nonprofit and my parents, a lot of times my parents would say to me, my daughter enjoys your program, but I have no clue what my child is doing with you. And so really trying to help parents understand first what I was doing with their kids. So I decided to write a book just that. What is STEM? Like, I felt like nobody really knew what it was. So I wanted to write a book to help educate my parents and kids all over the world about what STEM is. I wanted kids to be able to look at my book and see themselves in these STEM roles and understand what roles they can go into from different areas of STEM. So in the book, you'll see I talk about, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I have careers where they can see themselves in those careers. And I asked a great question, like, which one would you choose? And so it was really the why I had to write the book. And I went back and forth with a lot of people. It was like, what is STEM? Is that just it? And I was like, yeah, that's actually the question. I want to ask people, what is it? Like, I want people to dive into what it is and understand what it is, because so many people don't know. They have no clue about what you're talking about when you come in the room with that acronym. And even when you start to break it down, right? So I really wanted to create a book for children to understand what it is. And what I've learned from creating this book is that it's working. I get a lot of videos and a lot of things coming back to me where kids are asking the question. They're telling you which part of STEM they want to go into. They'll be able to tell you about the different roles. Even with my own daughters, he'll tell me, Mom, I've learned so much through this book from you, right? And so for me, my goal is for kids to get my two favorite things, exposure from it, as well as representation. I want kids to be able to see themselves in these roles in that book. Now, will I continue doing more books? Yeah, kind of. I think so, because people are kind of already signed me up to do to do more. My goal is to continue to do things most definitely in from the whole STEM arena, because that's what I love. And I also have created so many great things that I've done with schools and things like that I really feel like I need to map it out, because I think it's going to be just helpful to kids and also educators. Shout out to the educators, because they are hugely supporting my book. And everyone I know that's been just grateful at getting a copy of my book. And so I do see myself continuing to be an author and continue to write and push out more content.
And I think it's important that you mentioned, like, this is not just a kid's book, it's also for parents. Again, like, exposing parents to the possibilities for their kids through this medium, and making it accessible to both, to both parents and kids. And I think that's really, really important. So while, one thing that, while another book is perhaps in the works right now, what you are doing is extending the STEM initiative with STEM kits that are coming out. And so you have these kits. You mentioned you also have a podcast. Could you share with us a little bit about what these kits are, how kids are going to be using them, and then what your future plans are for these kits, the podcast, and the other future books that you've got coming out?
Yeah, so my STEM kit line is called STEM Exposed. And with this STEM kits, so the funny thing is, since 2019, I've been building kits for my nonprofit forever, especially during the pandemic. I used to build my own kits at home and ship them everywhere. So this is something I've always done, but over the time, I was really observed the things that my girls had done that they just really loved doing. And so I said, coming from exposure, that I'm going to take the things I know my girls have loved and put them in a box. And so with the way my STEM kit line works right now, I'm starting with my science line. So the first one up is my Galaxy Slime kit. I've done this project with my girls and they really enjoyed it. And kids just love slime. So,
well, it's great that you can connect a craft that's really popular with STEM. It's making those connections and understanding, this fun project has, a lot of other applications or possibilities behind it. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to use this kit as something that can be done at home with children and their parents, but also in schools. I've had schools engage me about being able to bring these kids into their space, because a lot of times teachers have that curiosity of introducing their kids to this subject as well, but they also need the support of how to do it. So I want my kids to play, be a part of that, be in those classrooms and be able to help them. So there's cool things that I'm going to do from an educational realm to be able to support teachers, not to just have my physical kit, but actually support them through doing these projects with the students in their classroom.
I think that's phenomenal. And as someone who's coming from a rural, setting and went to a really rural school, our teachers, lots of them are teaching multiple subjects. They might not have the capacity or even the bandwidth to sometimes put together stuff like this, but it's so important to getting that exposure. So I think that's, a really helpful thing that, I'm seeing some initiatives that are similar, and just, want to cheerlead all sorts of initiatives like that especially are getting STEM into like the elementary school classroom, where science is not yet such a huge focus, or at least it wasn't at my school. Like, it became so later on, but having those activities that, teachers who might be hungry and craving ways to interact with their students in that way, can do that. So I think that's really, really fantastic. So how are you getting these STEM kits to schools?
So teachers engage me.
Okay.
So the pleasure about doing a lot of great STEM work in my community is that people come and see the stuff that I do. And they typically ask me, how do you get that into my school? And so I'll go out and I'll do those endeavors in their schools. And I've had the pleasure of doing some amazing ones with the students in schools. And then they'll learn more about what I offer, whether it's my book or it's my kit. And then they asked me, how can I get those kids in my school? And so that's pretty much where it starts. I think it's just my credibility in the work and the impact that people have seen with my program that's led them to want more. And so that's what this whole stem line, this book is just to feed what people want more of, but also to give exposure. It's needed. And for sure representation for me. And it's working. Kids love it. I've read this book to many children, and when I see them answer the question at the end, it's just like, wow, I'm doing my part, right? To be able to bring more kids into and more people into this space. And so, but yeah, they typically ask me, and I say, sure, here, you can have it.
Perfect. All right, so you heard it here. Just reach out to Cara.
Or you can go to my website. I do have a website.
We did link it in the chat, so go ahead and check it out.
And my kit is on there. I'm very happy. I've built the kit, and I'm very pleased with the kit. And I think it's going to be a very fun time for parents with their children.
We like to hear it. Learning is supposed to be fun. You know, there's a lot to be said about the educational value of toys. And not to say that this is necessarily a toy, but
it can be. It's slime.
It's exactly. Slime.
And that's my first science one. I do have two more that's coming behind this one.
Okay, awesome. What are we going to be looking for in the next two?
I gave you a sneak peek of my next one. My next one is most definitely going to be around candles. I've had some successful candle making camps. A lot of adults were wanting to be in that one. So I got to open it up for whoever wants to come. So I've had some successful candle making camps here in Houston. And so I want to be able to, even my nonprofit, we have made our own candles, which were a huge success too. These won't be those candles. We did it one and done for those, but this is a kit for people to really be able to learn how to make candles independently on themselves. And our hope is always from anything that we do that maybe they could turn this into their own type of business for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I'll have to look out for that one. That one sounds like it has some pretty mass appeal.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So one of the questions that we always love to ask our guests, and this is something that we were first introduced to by Kristen Dickinson, but then we later learned was something that she learned from a different guest of ours, Anissa Muthana. So a lot of women in engineering bringing us this concept, and it's that personal board of directors. So thinking, kind of reframing that mentor-mentee relationship, and this is kind of just speaking from my personal experience, I always thought that had to be somewhat formalized to go and say like, hey, Cara, will you be my mentor? And like really formalize it in a way, but truly it's these connections where people, look up to someone they admire and say like, hey, can I come to you with my questions and advice? And so it sounds like a lot of your girls kind of keep you around as their personal, like on their personal board. And I think that's fantastic. I'm curious who has been on your personal board and then going forward as someone serving on someone else's personal board. What is, I think, what are you gaining from your personal board? And then what are you excited to give forward?
Yeah. So we have my personal board. I tell people my board we're a pretty young board, but we're all leaders in our industry. So we all have the same shared passion. My board and I, most of us are first-gen college graduates, and we always wanted someone to do this for us. So that's how we have that alignment there. So we're able to bring together our wonderful skill sets and make wonderful things happen. But we have an advisory committee, which are people who are, I say they're living their best life. They're retired.
Okay. Yeah.
And they've mastered these industries. And so we're able to go and rely on them for any advice, right? As we continue to work towards grander success. And so they're able to give us a lot of their knowledge and understanding of running, whether it's a nonprofit or maybe they were CEOs of someone's company. So they support us heavily from that realm. And so I'm just happy. And they're from multiple industries, multiple backgrounds. So I'm able to just reach out to them anytime I need support from maybe it's an activity I'm working on or just from a business understanding. So I have a cool advisory committee that supports us there. This is the only board I serve on. For many years, I just went to a wonderful women in board event. So this is kind of where I learned it from. I thought I was just too young to be on someone's board. So, and I always thought my ideal board to serve on is a corporation, right? An industry. And so I remember telling a lady, I was like, well, I just thought I was just too young to be on a board. And she said to me, you'll be surprised. She said, actually, you're a great candidate for a lot of boards and companies. So I'm still working on my venture there, but with my workload and all that I do, I never really thought about stopping and being on a board. But they do serve as mentors. My mentors are not associated with on my boards or anything like that, because my mentors are just that.
Yeah, that's why it's your personal board, right? Yeah.
I just go to them and I actually tell my mentor, you ever meet her? I have several because I recruit people to be my mentors. I told my mentor when I first met her, I said, you're going to be my mentor. And here we are almost 10 years later. And she's been my mentor and my huge support. And it's good to have someone who's watched you grow in your career and truly believe in you, where they would say to you, hey, whatever you need, however I can support you. They're willing to dive in with you. So I do have those people, my people, and we continue to grow our relationships and across many industries. And a lot of my mentors don't even live in the same state as me. These are just people I've met along the way that I've developed a relationship with, that believe in me, that kind of just took me under their wing.
Yeah, I think that's really a great way to look at it. Of just, people that are there for you, that are cheerleading you, that are supporting you, that are watching you grow and giving you encouragement along the way, and or just being people that you can ask and come to for advice. And that's just, I love thinking about it as a personal board of directors. And I think this is, I'm speaking for Carol a little bit too, but I've never gone to someone like you have and said, hey, you're going to be my mentor. I've been a little intimidated to do that, but I certainly have people that I go to for advice. But thinking of them as like, oh, you're kind of on my personal board, you're helping me direct my life and my career, really helps me think a little bit more about who I'm kind of going to for advice. And so that was just really useful for me as kind of a reframe. And we love to ask other people about, who are your mentors and who are your board of directors, because it's so important to have people like that in your life.
It is very important. And I think especially in this industry where there's not a lot of women, like this woman was just phenomenal. Like, it's sometimes where you just have to say, you know what, that's a lot of knowledge, and she's just an amazing person. And you know who you want to be associated with. And so she knew my personality, so she took me under her wing. But I mean, we're all we have, right? Like, there's not that many of us women in this space. So we have to be able to let each other know, hey, I want to support you, or I need your support.
Exactly. Thank you, Kara. Now, before we finish off for today, usually what we do is we do a round table with our final thoughts before we close. And Kara, I'll give you the last word. So Grace, would you like to go first with your final thoughts?
I think my thoughts are really centered on, I think the piece that I just loved the most about this conversation is hard to pick, truly. But it's that ripple effect that we see when, we're focusing on, I think I'm saying Kara, focusing on girls' education, right? That ripple effect that can have, that's going to impact parents, that's going to impact people around it, by putting a spotlight on education specifically for girls and for, underrepresented girls in this industry, and how impactful that can be. It's very inspiring. And I think oftentimes we get a little bit bogged down in the statistics of, women in STEM are still very, like, it's a steep road ahead, but then seeing, the impact that things like this are having, that are spreading, Black girls who do engineer, you've got 3 chapters and you're growing, and it's really exciting to see where that's going. So that was my big takeaway, is that ripple effect, because that's going to continue to spread.
Excellent. Thank you, Grace. For me, it was definitely the word support, because offering support for the teachers and the parents really kind of ties a bow on what you started. And maybe there's that's some ripple effect kind of going on there, where there's the one part is the exposure, but the next part is having people in your life carry that on, because they might not have you there on your shoulder every day. So having the teachers there, the parents there for the added support, I think is ideal and important part of your success. So that's it for me. So yeah, Cara, what are your final thoughts for today?
Yeah, for me, I think it has to go back. Of course, I love exposure and representation. I talk about it year round, all the time. That's what I do. But I want to encourage people, and I'm going to talk based off of what I said when someone told me, turn your no's into yeses. Like, fulfill yourself, live your dreams. If someone tells you no, always trying to find your route to your yes. Because my motto is, again, you only get one life, so live it the best that you can, for sure.
Excellent. That's a perfect
Great
end.
way to, yeah.
Yeah, a perfect end. So I would like to thank you for joining us today, Cara. And I think your continued support for STEM and awareness and education is a huge contribution to manufacturing. It might not be obvious, but I think in time, as you have cohorts graduate and find fulfilling work, I think it will definitely be visible. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us in the audience today. And if you like conversations like this, look out for more on our LinkedIn live shows. And we also welcome you to meet us at in-person events. And we'd like to share that we're going to be at IME East in New York City, June 13th to 15th. And we will be having conversations like this on the advanced manufacturing stage there. So thank you to all, and everyone have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Cara.
Thank you.
Thank you.